Good morning, or afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Tim Miller. I'm a partner in Plum Consulting, a preeminent telecommunications advisory firm based in London and Paris. We've been instructing governments, regulators, and operators on the appropriate use and value of spectrum for many years now. However, it's only recently there's been a move to consider not just the pure economic value of spectrum, but also a social value. In this talk, I'm going to introduce you to the concept of social value, what it is and why is it important, how does it affect spectrum allocation, and what should regulators be doing to ensure that spectrum award design captures it. I'm going to start with some theoretical economics, looking at the concept of externalities and how these relate to private and social value. Don't worry, there are graphs. This is a standard demand and supply diagram. You can see that as price goes up, then there is less demand for a service, but companies are willing to supply more of it. At low prices, you have excess demand. At high prices, you have excess supply. At P' you have an equilibrium, where the amount people demand and the amount companies supply is equal. This works very well in many markets, including telecommunications. Operators will look at the cost of their networks and the spectrum they use, and will supply the equilibrium amount of capacity, drawing on the total demand coming from consumers. This equilibrium is a market optimizing position for the private market. However, telecommunications do not just benefit private individuals, but they also benefit society as a whole through access to education, healthcare, governance, productivity, and countless other issues. Society demands more use of and access to telecommunications than individuals do. And this is particularly true when you look at some of the 5G use cases being displayed at this conference. So a disconnect exists where private individuals pay but society benefits. There are many famous examples of this: bus routes, police forces, cultural events. You can see that society here wants a greater quantity QS, but at that level individuals are only willing to pay PP, whereas suppliers want to be paid PS. At market equilibrium, society is underserved. So what can we do about that? In general, you would look at shifting the supply curve, giving incentives to suppliers to reduce their prices or increase output. You want to intervene in the market, so you internalize the externality, meaning the equilibrium that is reached takes into account the added value to society. This is all very well, but how does it impact on 5G and mobile networks? We have seen already that if we want to maximise the benefits to society, we need to intervene in the market. Telecommunication regulators generally have an obligation to secure the optimum or most efficient allocation of spectrum, but it's very defined how this efficiency should be considered. If we are trying to give the greatest benefit to all citizens, then social value is the way forward. Regulators have already recognised that the market equilibrium is not necessarily socially optimum, and have introduced measures to rectify this. Unfortunately, they've often approached this in the wrong way. A large number of regulators artificially increase the supply of services to the socially optimal level by putting obligations on the operators to cover a certain population or provide a certain service quality. Meeting these obligations leads to an increase in the cost of providing services, and you can see how this shifts the supply curve up. This isn't a market in equilibrium. To restore it to the right level, the operator needs to lower its costs. There may be inefficiencies to be realised in network design, but regulators have control over the cost of spectrum, and they need to lower this if they are imposing obligations on operators. Many regulators have not done this, and there have been a large number of failed awards over the last few years where reserve prices were set too high or obligations were set too harsh. So how should they be making adjustments? Earlier, I talked about internalising the externality. This is where we try to bring social value into the equilibrium and let the market settle there. This is effectively what subsidising spectrum does. The questions that regulators need to answer are, first, what is the socially optimum quantity? And second, what does this mean for spectrum prices? We at Plum have carried out a number of econometric studies over the past few years to look at how different factors influence the value of spectrum. One of these factors is the level of obligation. Our models reveal how the imposition of obligations significantly reduce the value of spectrum to operators. This shows one of our models, and you can see there's a significant negative coefficient on the existence of license obligations. In fact, since this is a logarithmic model, we can see that imposing obligations reduces the value of spectrum by about 30%. This is a fairly blunt instrument. We are only looking at a binary question of whether there are any obligations or not, but further research is likely to let us understand how different types of regulation impact on value. Now, this result won't hold in all countries, but it does show the importance of taking account of social value when setting reserve prices or spectrum fees. If regulators can estimate how spectrum values are affected, they can make appropriate adjustments, improving welfare for all. And that leads us to our call to action. Keep spectrum costs low to make sure operators can meet social demand. Estimate the socially optimum demand and set your obligations or subsidies or fee reductions appropriately. Reconsider spectrum policy to ensure it's being run for the good of all of society. And enact obligations or other social measures where the market fails. This is a vitally important lesson for us all. The classic auction model for spectrum award is great if you are only interested in maximising individual welfare, but by making adjustments to how awards are run, regulators can improve the welfare of the whole country. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions or comments, or if you want to talk to us about how we can help you implement social value into spectrum awards in your country, please do get in touch, and enjoy the rest of the conference.